of Belmopan, where we will be joining for the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Climate Change and Solid Waste Management press conference. Now we will be joining today's host, and we will get underway. We're here at the auditorium here at 7552 Hummingbird Highway in Belmopan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. I would quickly like to jump into the agenda and call on our Chief Executive Officer of the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Climate Change and Solid Waste Management, Ms. Milagro Matos, to give us some opening remarks to get this press release started.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maldonado. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Minister Orlando Habet, heads of department, technical officers, members of the media, colleagues, and those joining us through the various media platforms. Welcome and thank you for being here. Today's press conference is the beginning of what we intend to make a regular quarterly engagement with the public. Every 3 months, the ministry will provide updates on its major activities, report on progress, introduce new initiatives, and respond to matters of public concern. The work of this ministry affects people's lives daily. It concerns the quality of the air we breathe, the water we depend on, the protection of the forests and wildlife, the management of our waste, our response to climate change, and the health of the rivers and the natural systems that support our communities and livelihoods. The public, therefore, has a right to receive information that is timely, clear, and grounded in evidence. This afternoon, we will provide updates in 3 important areas. First, the Climate Change Department, through Chief Idalme, will speak about the recently enacted Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiatives Act and the upcoming Climate Change Week, moving from policy commitments to practical action through the establishment of stronger frameworks for accountability, investment, and public participation. Second, the Forest Department, through Acting Chief Yanira, will address the increasing important issues of coexistence with wildlife. As developments expand and human activity moves closer to natural habitats, we must help communities understand how to respond safely and responsibly while protecting Belize's biodiversity. Third, the Department of the Environment, through Chief Mai, will provide an update on its investigation into the fish kill incident in the Belize River Valley. We recognize the serious concern this incident is causing, particularly among the communities that depend on the river. The department will explain the work undertaken, the information available at this stage, and the next steps in the investigation. I want to be clear that where the investigations remain ongoing, we will distinguish carefully between what has been confirmed, what is still being examined, and what cannot yet be concluded. Transparency does not mean speculating before the evidence is complete. It means sharing verified information, acknowledging what is not yet known, and keeping the public informed as the work progresses. The technical experts responsible for these areas are here before you today. Following the presentations, members of the media will have an opportunity to ask direct and important questions. We welcome constructive engagements, and we ask only that the exchange remains professional and respectful so that the public can receive the clearest and most useful information possible. Our intention is to speak about the ministry's work and to strengthen public understanding, accountability, and trust. With that, it is my pleasure to welcome you once again, and I invite the first presenter from the Climate Change Department, the Chief Climate Change Officer, Mrs. Idalme Pinello, to begin her presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, CEO Milagro. And I would like to acknowledge the presence of Minister Habet and also welcome to the media on this important discussion that mentioned before CEO on the Climate Change and Carbon Market Initiative Act, which is a milestone to be proud of, I think, as a country, as a nation. Why? Because this act established a national framework that will strengthen the climate resilience and also the governance part, especially when it comes to transparency and accountability. One of the main things is because based on this framework, we will be responsible to implement the carbon market readiness. And I say readiness because this act does not mean that Belize is ready to engage in automatically on carbon market. But first, we have to build the machinery in order for us to initiate any implementation phase. So by that said, I think I have 3 key messages that I want to share to the public. And apologies, we're trying to make it as less technical as possible because this thematic area is very technical. So I want to ensure that the public do understand the reason why we are doing it by phase. So the first thing is, in order for us to have any ability to engage in carbon market trading, we need to be strengthen our climate institution. And that's the reason why the Act formulates the Climate Change Department, which provides also the Belize National Climate Change Council that will give that strengthening in governance at the highest level and will provide a national transparency and also an MRV arrangements that will provide for us in order for us to track data. Because data will create trust in buyers. Also, integrity and protection comes first. Carbon market participation must be at a credible data, transparency, accountability, and also environmental integrity that will also safeguard our any interactions or trading and be fairly benefit sharing. And this act creates that opportunity. First, I would like to say that as a ministry and as a department, we decided to move forward by phase, learning from different countries, and also when it comes to having that trust that we need to build to our communities. As mentioned, first, the Act provides that climate change department, which build an institutional arrangement that needs to coordinate any national climate change policy, reporting and implementation. Second, it provides that National Climate Change Council, which will safeguard our national and oversight our national policy directions and developing of standards, procedures, and safeguards of the market arena. Thirdly, we have to strengthen also our national transparency system, which Belize needs to measure emissions, track progress, and on any climate change commitment, report accurately, and make decisions based on credible evidence. And fourth, the Act will provide a national registry system which will track carbon credit, mitigation outcomes, and to avoid double counting. So with that said, it brings to the point that I want to echo to everybody. This approach that the government of Belize, through the department, is clear. We need to build the machinery first, then we can open the market only when the system is ready. And that means when the system is ready is that first we need to have an act, which we have now. We are in the process of having a policy, climate change carbon market policy, which will be ready by the beginning of September. And then we will move forward when it comes to regulations. And once we have the policy and regulation in place, it's very important that we have a system that can support all that information that we need to gather, from project applications to documentation of data, also to secure that the land that is being put as a project or any other project, it doesn't have to be forest standing. It can be in any forest, in any thematic area. We need to have accountability and also to document any applications. So with that said, first of all, we have started the commence of the Act by an SI 69, which commenced only in the institutional part. No application at this point is being in any process of approval because we have not commenced it. And thanks very much. And I think based on that, we have a platform, a national platform every year that we showcase our initiatives, and there comes the Climate Week 2026. With that said, I would like to start by saying that the department mandate is to communicate, mainstream, and coordinate any climate change policy or initiative in the country. And the Climate Week is our main platform, our national platform that we can disseminate the information, our work to our communities. This year theme is Orange Economy and Technology. And we were proudly said that we put this in a competition, and we had a young individual that bring to the table a team that is very in line with our team for this year, which is where innovation meets impact, driving resilience, scaling technology, and expanding in inclusion in climate action. And I would like to invite the entire country of Belize to move to our fifth Climate Week, which will take place the 21st of August to the 24th in Punta Gorda town at the Punta Gorda Sporting Complex. And right there, you will have the opportunity to explore and interact climate action, innovation, technology, creativity, conservation, and inclusion. When I mean inclusion, I mean everybody at all ages. But with that, I would like to summarize two things: the days and also the style of how we set Climate Week. We like to bring the conference of parties that we do participate every year to negotiate climate change to Belize. We call it the blue zone and the green zone. The green zone is where we showcase and interact with our experts through panel discussions. And the green zone is where we exhibit and present all booths from our organizations and also line ministries. And during the days, we have the opening ceremony, but we'll start with a big parade. So we invite all our community members to participate. And the officially opening ceremony. The second day will be the Orange Economy and Creativity. And then the third day we have the forest and agriculture sector. And the last day will be the blue spaces and technology. But I don't want to pass on the mic to my colleague to proceed on the other agenda items, because first I need to echo my champs who support me in making Climate Week possible, which is the Protected Area Conservation Trust through the Green Climate Fund, and also through UNDP and the Euroclima Project, and also the Corozal Sustainable Future Initiative, the World Wildlife Fund, the Department of Environment, and Belize Film Commission. And I would like to end my message of this day that Climate Week 2026 seeks to demonstrate that climate action is not about just environmental protection, but it's also about making it an opportunity to create where we can empower communities, support innovation, invest in our young people, which are our future, and also strengthening our livelihoods, protects Belize natural resources, and also using technology to build that more resilient and inclusive future. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Pinello, for the update and for highlighting the work being undertaken to move Belize's climate agenda from policy to action. We're pleased to have our executive and technical leadership that will be providing the updates today for today's topic. And with that, I would like to move into our next presentation that will provide an update on human-wildlife conflicts and the Forest Department's work on coexisting with wildlife, in particular the recent crocodile encounters that we have seen in the media. And with that, I would like to invite Mrs. Yanira Pop, the Acting Chief Forest Officer. You have the floor, ma'am.
Good afternoon, and acknowledging Minister Habet, our CEO, Ms. Milagro Matos, members of the media, my fellow colleagues, and all our viewers. This afternoon, we will be discussing with you coexisting with crocodiles specifically, since this is one of the issues that we are having in country. And at the end, I will be talking a bit about our Grading Belize initiative. That is something that we champion and we cannot leave aside. The Belize Forest Department will be giving you a very straightforward message today, that human life is very important. It is one of our priorities. The safety and well-being of our communities must always be taken seriously. Crocodiles are part of Belize's natural environment. They deserve our respect, but they also deserve us to be cautious. And where people and crocodiles share the same environment, coexistence must be based on responsible behavior, awareness, and cooperation. FD does not and will not dismiss the concerns of people who feel threatened by crocodiles. At the same time, we have the responsibility to protect Belize's wildlife and to uphold the laws that govern wildlife protection. The presence of crocodiles in lagoons, in mangroves, in canals, in rivers, in wetlands, coastal areas, do not itself mean that something is wrong or that there is danger. Crocodiles are native wildlife. These are their natural habitats. The American crocodile, in particular, naturally occurs in Belize's coastal areas, or mangroves, lagoons, and wetlands, including areas around the northern Keys. The recent incident in Kikaker illustrates this very clearly. The video that circulated on social media showed individuals in the water at night, while we assume it's an American crocodile because it's saltwater, approached the area and moved away. It is important to note that there was no physical contact between the crocodile and the individuals other than the sense of fear. While that particular incident did not result in injury, it should not be dismissed, as was in the case in Guinea Grass, there was a direct contact with the crocodile. Wildlife encounters can become very dangerous when people do not understand wildlife behavior or when intentionally we encourage wildlife to become comfortable around us. That is why we are taking these concerns very seriously. We are fortunate to say that we have significant areas where people and wildlife share the same landscapes. Our tourism depends heavily on our natural environment. Our communities depend on rivers, on mangroves, on wetlands, on lagoons, on our coastal ecosystems. And wildlife depend on these same ecosystems for food, for shelter, for reproduction, and for survival. As our communities grow, tourism increases and development expands. The areas where people and wildlife interact also increase. This means that human conflict encounters are sometimes, and in most cases, unavoidable. The question is not whether we can completely eliminate wildlife from areas where people live. The question is, how do we reduce unnecessary risk while allowing wildlife to remain where it naturally belongs? This is the concept that we refer to as coexistence. It does not mean approaching a crocodile or feeding it, swimming next to it, taking a photograph from a few feet away, and it certainly does not mean attempting to touch, capture, or relocate animals ourselves. Coexistence means giving wildlife space and changing our behavior so that unnecessary encounters are avoided. But looking at the legal framework from this, to add a little bit more to this discussion, the Wildlife Protection Act, Chapter 220, defines wildlife to include all domesticated animals, birds, reptiles, as well as their parts, which are the eggs and the nests. Important for today's discussion, nonetheless, is that both species of crocodiles found in Belize are included in Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act, and these two species are the American or saltwater crocodile and the Merlet's crocodile. This means that we cannot freely capture it, kill it, handle it, or otherwise interfere with it. Additionally, at an international level, crocodiles are also recognized within the IUCN Red List conservation framework. So when we speak about protecting crocodiles, this is not merely a conservation preference. There is a legal framework in Belize that provides protection to these animals. At the same time, it is important for me to stress and to have it very clear that the wildlife protection does not mean that the safety of our people is secondary. It does not mean that the answer to human-crocodile conflict is simply for us to eliminate or to relocate crocodiles. It recognizes, the Act recognizes the right of a person to take measures that are necessary whenever they feel threatened. So the law recognizes both sides of the issue, the protection of wildlife and the protection of people. Our responsibility as the Forest Department is to apply this framework responsibly and to support solutions that reduce the likelihood of either people or wildlife being harmed. One of the biggest concerns that we want to address today is feeding crocodiles, either directly or indirectly. And why is this of such concern? Because wildlife learns. When a wild animal begins to associate people with food, its natural behavior changes. Instead of maintaining their natural distance from people, an animal may begin to approach the areas while people are present because they're expecting to get fed. They become, to an extent, lazy, we can say, and they stop hunting for their natural prey. It may begin to associate boats, docks, shorelines, fish cleaning areas, or particular locations with an easy source of food. These are the things that increase the likelihood of encounters. And once, like I mentioned before, a wild animal becomes accustomed to receiving food from people, the behavior can be difficult to reverse. That is why feeding wildlife is not an act of kindness. It can actually place both the animal and people at great risk. FD strongly reminds everyone, do not feed crocodiles, do not encourage them to approach, do not throw food to them, do not attract them for photographs or entertainment. So there are some very simple actions that I would like to stress today that we need to take, which is the first one is to never to feed them or approach them, never to capture, handle, or relocate a crocodile yourself. These are powerful wild animals. A person who approaches one because they believe it is very small, inactive, or harmless can put themselves and others at risk. If a crocodile is causing concern, contact trained personnel. Third, avoid swimming at night, in early hours dawn, or areas where we know we have crocodiles. Fourth is to keep children and pets away from the water's edge where crocodiles are present. Fifth, keep waterways and surrounding areas free of food, waste, fish remains, and rubbish. Most importantly, and I stress this, and it's a message that we need to share, if you see a crocodile that you believe poses a threat to you, report it. Do not attempt to deal with it yourself. But you might say, we are telling you what to do, but what are we doing? This response cannot simply be to tell you all to be careful. We recognize that communities need information, guidance, appropriate signage, trained response mechanisms, and continued engagement. That is why we have convened a task force with our partners, ACES Wildlife Rescue and the Crocodile Research Coalition, who are experts to identify several immediate actions, which include, first, increased public education. We need to reach our residents, our visitors, our tour operators, businesses, and other key stakeholders with clear information about crocodile behavior and safe practices. Second, community engagement. Third, appropriate signage where necessary. Relocation is not the long-term answer, despite that everyone might say, why do we not kill the crocodiles? Why we do not relocate the crocodiles? This is not, like I said, the solution. Crocodiles cannot be removed. They cannot be killed. We do not have an idea of the scientific, or there's no scientific evidence if they return to the area. So the Forest Department, along with our partners, which is the task force that we have created, or we have revamped, is that relocation is not viewed as a long-term solution to human crocodile. Instead, we must focus on prevention, education, responsible behavior, and address the factors that contribute to increased interactions. And one of these is the feeding directly and indirectly. If an animal is removed today, but the same conditions remain, and we continue feeding them, then these might likely return. We should also remember that it's not only food sources, but human feeding, especially unmanaged waste, garbage areas in these swamps that basically attract these animals. The long-term plan that we have, and it's something that will take a while, is this shared responsibility that we have with our partners in doing a crocodile census, a national crocodile census. What this national crocodile census will do is it will help us to understand where crocodiles occur, which areas have high concentration, the species that are present, the population trends, important habitat, areas where human-crocodile interactions are more frequent, and factors that may be contributing to those interactions. A crocodile count will not by itself eliminate human-wildlife conflict, but it will give us a stronger scientific basis for management. It can help us identify priority areas for monitoring, education, signage, and community engagement. It will also help us evaluate whether our management interventions are working or what we need to modify. As I said, ultimately, coexistence is the responsibility of not only FD, but of government, of our conservation partners, or tourism, businesses, residents, visitors. Each one of us have a responsibility. So a message to the public that we want to send today is, number one, respect the habitat. If you're in an area where crocodiles naturally occur, understand that you're sharing that environment with wildlife. Never feed wildlife, either directly or indirectly. We can change their habits. Number three, keep your distance. Take safety precautions, and most importantly, report concerns. If you believe that there's a crocodile and you have a threat, please report it. We relocate these, despite that they are not the solution. We do relocate the crocodiles. So you can contact the Belize Forest Department hotline, the Crocodile Research Coalition, ACES Wildlife Rescue. So in closing with my first topic, which is crocodile, it is important to reiterate that safety of our people is extremely important. Our responsibility is to find a responsible balance that protects both humans and wildlife. The national census that we want to do as a long-term plan will provide the scientific data and baseline information needed to advise government, communities, and our partners on how crocodiles should be managed in Belize. Our goal is to have healthy ecosystems, informed communities, responsible wildlife management, and most importantly, people who can live, work, and recreate safely in these environments that they share with wildlife. So this is the concept that what we refer to as coexistence with our wildlife. Now moving to my other topic, which is the Greening Belize initiative. It's something that we are championing as a department and as a government and as a ministry. I should say that ongoing activities that we have is a census with all our different partners, seeing how much plants they have actually, how much trees they have planted, the viability of these trees, the species that they have planted. We also have the signing of some memorandum of understandings where there's the shared commitment between government and the organization stating that they will be able to plant these trees, and also, and very important, is that they will be sharing the information on our Greening Belize application. That is a very modern application, easily accessible, easily to use. The Android version is already available on Play Store. This app has two different levels. The first level is for individuals to record. If you want, you have an anniversary, you have a birth of a child, or a very important event, you can plant it and you can register in there. And the second platform that we have developed is for organizations, for licensees, or any other big company that is wishing to do any restoration activity with hectares on a specific species for a purpose which can be plantation, then they can record it in here. This information, you can actually go into our dashboard at the Forest Department website, and you can see what tree you have planted and which one you have not planted. The goal of this Greening Belize initiative is to restore 1 million trees within the 5 years. Now it's going to our 4 years. We're getting there, so slowly we are going. Whilst doing this Greening Belize initiative as our goal to plant the 1 million trees, we will also be meeting some of our international targets, such as the Bond Challenge, where we have committed of restoring 130,000 hectares, 50,000 within the forest sector, and the other 80,000 under the agro landscape. So this is an ongoing initiative that we have, and we encourage you to please join us. It's easy to use. Anyone can take a picture, and at the end, you will be contributing to having a more greener and a more healthier Belize. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pop, for providing that greater context on what the ministry is doing to promote coexistence with communities, Belize's wildlife, and about the Greening Belize initiative. Our next topic will be an issue that has attracted significant public and media attention, the Belize River Valley fish kill. The presentation will provide the update on the investigation undertaken by the Department of the Environment. To present these findings, we have no other than Mr. Anthony Mai, Sr., the Chief Environmental Officer. Mr. Mai, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Maldonado. Recognizing Minister Orlando Habet, good evening. CEO Matos, FO, colleagues, technical staff of the Department of Environment who are present, and also the media. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here to present this information. Again, this information is very important to the people who are living in the area that is being affected. And as a responsible government department, it is our responsibility to share what we have done so far and the information that we have found. In addition to this presentation, I'll just take a few minutes after this to give a quick update on some of the activities that we are doing in relation to what we call the BINIT campaign. It's an anti-littering campaign. I want to spend maybe just a few minutes just speaking on that because it's important from a national perspective. I have a presentation that I had prepared for this because some of what I want to present is important for you to see it visually. It's more impacting. I think it sends a clearer message in terms of what we're speaking about. So the Department of Environment received a report of a fish kill affecting the Belize River Valley on August the 3rd. We immediately put together a team and deploy the team out in the fields to collect the data that we need. When the Department of Environment is informed of a fish kill, we look at three possible outcomes, or causes, I should say. One is we look at the possibility of it being disease-related. We also look at the possibility of it being toxicity, where certain toxic contaminants are placed within the water body. We also look to see if there's any possibility of a high level of organic matter that is enters the water body, because again, three of these approach has certain outcomes. We liaised with several local experts in Belize to discuss the possibility of it being disease-related. We were informed and we agree that the possibility of it being a disease is quite low, and so we kind of ruled that out. The reasons for that is because the experts are saying that when a disease affects an aquatic ecosystem, the disease are species-specific, meaning that they impact one species alone. The evidence that we have shows that several different species of fish were impacted. In fact, we were informed and we saw that even crocodiles and turtles to some degree were impacted. So that, in a sense, ruled out the possibility of it being a disease. We then focus our attention on it being toxicity in terms of a chemical deposition placed in the water or a high organic matter or load entered into the Belize River during or before the event. So we kind of put together two teams to go out into the field to observe what's going on and to collect water quality data. We had a team deployed from Cotton Tree all the way up in Belompan area before the Santander discharge channel. They conducted sampling from around the Banana Bank area. We also collected samples from an area between that point and Santander's discharge channel, and I'll show you where that channel is. We took samples from 150 meters upstream from Santander discharge channel, at the canal, and then 150 meters downstream. We also took samples at St. Paul's Bank, Isabella Bank, Flowers Bank, and Barrel Boom. We also took samples from Santander Effluent Treatment Pond, from the drainage network within the farm, and from the canal itself. And so the water quality assessment was quite extensive. We conducted what is called in situ sampling. That means sample on site. The data that we collected were data of the water quality at that point in time. And we also collected what is called grab sample. So we collected sample in a bottle. We brought these samples to our lab to get tested. In terms of the observation, we observed that the area between St. Paul's Bank and Grace Bank was the area most impacted. That is where we found most of the dead fish. And also the data will show that that is the area where the water quality was poorest, basically, as it relates to dissolved oxygen in particular. In terms of observation also, we found that apart from Santander Farm, there are several different large farms within the area. In particular, we found a rice field in the area that is of significant concern to us. The rice field basically drains its flooded water directly into the Laboring Creek, and the Laboring Creek leads directly into the Belize River. So the image on the screen shows the area in red is the area where the fish kill was most prominent. or was at its worst, basically. And then the two areas in green are the rice field. And then you could see the Santander discharge channel and where the rice field discharges into the Laboring Creek and into the Belize River. Just for reference and for information, again, this is an image of the Santander's factory and plant. The area, the pond in the screen is Santander's effluent discharge pond. It is important to inform the public that Santander's effluent discharge pond does not lead directly into the Belize River. In fact, it leads into the drainage network in the field, and the water from within the drainage network is used for irrigation. This is an image of the rice field that we found north of Santander. As you could see, it is located within a lowland area, and there is a canal that was dug in the middle of it, and the canal leads directly into Laboring Creek. Laboring Creek, in our estimation, is a sensitive ecosystem. In terms of water quality, again, in terms of in situ data, the data that we collected in the field, this image shows that 150 meters upstream from Santander Canal, the dissolved oxygen level was 7.36. At Santander Canal, it was 1.93, so you could see a significant reduction. 150 meters downstream from Santander's discharge, the dissolved oxygen level went up back to 6.1. And then at St. Paul Bank, it went down again to 2.39. Isabella Bank, in all the water quality data, is where the water quality was its poorest. In this case, the dissolved oxygen was 1.28 milligrams per liter. At Flowers Bank, it went to 1.58, Doublehead Cabbage 2 milligrams per liter, and at Barrel Boom, the dissolved oxygen level was 6.19. So in all samples, the degradation of water started at St. Paul's Bank to some degree. Well, in this case, Santander's Canal. But where the impact was most noted was from St. Paul's Bank to Barrel Boom. Barrel Boom is where the water quality began to improve. Now, dissolved oxygen is just a level of, is a measure of how much oxygen is available in water for fish to respire, basically to breathe. And so when they dissolve oxygen in an aquatic ecosystem, so the higher the number, the better. Normally in the Belize River, it's between 5 milligrams per liter to 7 milligrams per liter. These are healthy dissolved oxygen level. When the dissolved oxygen level falls to around 3 milligrams per liter, the aquatic ecosystems become stressed. And when it falls below 1 milligram per liter, it's in a critical situation, and it is when we begin to see fish kill, etc. And so just in terms of the information that we collected on the scene, the dissolved oxygen levels were excessively low in the area. The other water quality parameter that we tested several, but these are the ones that were out of normal. So we took samples for conductivity as well, and at, again, 150 meters above Santander Canal, it was at 358. So low conductivity levels are better water, basically. At Santander Canal discharge, it was at 1,605, and it's a microsiemens is the measure, units of measure. And then at 150 feet down from Santander, it went down back. Now, if you look at the previous slide in relation to the dissolved oxygen, 150 meters downstream from Santander, the dissolved oxygen level went up. But this is where like a rapid exists. And so whenever there's a rapid, when the water moves fast, the water is aerated, so the dissolved oxygen level went up back. In the case of conductivity water quality levels were improved because of the same rapid. But it degraded again at St. Paul's Bank all the way to Doublehead Cabbage, and then it began to improve in terms of getting lower numbers at Barrel Boom. So conductivity is a measure of, well, again, from a technical standpoint, it's a measure of an electrical current transmitting through water. But what that is, it measures the amount of minerals, the ions, the positive particles and the negative particles in the water. So it measures the amount of minerals basically in the water, which is critically important as well. The other important parameter that we found that was very off is chlorophyll A levels. So chlorophyll A level is an indication of algae bloom. And as you could see, at Santander Canal, it was at 1.89, and so high levels of chlorophyll A indicate algal bloom. So 150 meters above the canal, it was 1.89, which is, again, it's not that bad, but it's still concerning. At Santander, the chlorophyll A levels went up to 6.39, which is elevated. And then at the rapids, 150 meters downstream, it went back to 1.84. And then it began to increase again at St. Paul's Bank, the worst being at Isabella Bank at 7.5, and then improving all the way down to Burrell Boom. So this clearly indicated that, again, there was an elevated amount of algae in the water, so as an algae bloom. And again, when algae blooms, when they proliferate and they grow rapidly, they draw down on the dissolved oxygen. So the algae bloom could explain why the dissolved oxygen was low in these particular areas. Again, algae bloom normally are caused by high nutrients in the water body, so high phosphates, nitrates, and these are limiting factors in terms of plant growth, and algae is considered a plant in this case. And this is critically important because some people ask, well, why did the turtles and crocodiles died? And so when you have a water body with these characteristics, high algal levels, low dissolved oxygen, again, the water body undergoes a change. There's two types of bacteria that exist within the water body. There is an anaerobic bacteria, so bacteria that lives without oxygen, and there is aerobic bacteria, bacteria that lives with oxygen. When the oxygen level gets low, the bacteria that lives without oxygen grows rapidly, and they produce certain type of gases. In certain cases, there are some bacteria that produce methane, and there's another type of bacteria that produces hydrogen sulfide. Hydrogen sulfide is a very toxic gas at very low concentration. It is also a very heavy gas, so it floats right on top of the water surface, and we believe that that might be one of the reasons why crocodiles and turtles may have died. The other possible cause is mycotoxins. So cyanobacteria, in this case, could have proliferated in terms of the algal bloom. And cyanobacteria produces a mycotoxin, a chemical that is very toxic to life. And so that could also trigger the crocodile dying and the turtle dying. Again, this situation is the same situation that we found in 2019 when we were responding to the New River fish kill. The only major difference here is that the New River is very flat, the water moves slow, so the situation was worse. Here, at least the water was moving, basically. So in terms of total dissolved solids at Santander Canal, you could see we had elevated levels, 918.1, and then the numbers normalized along the way to Burrell Boom. In terms of pH, downstream from Santander Canal, it was 8.1. So this pH, again, there was not anything major per se in relation to the pH levels. And so in terms of water quality, we also did, as I mentioned, phosphates, nitrates, and sulfates. And so some of those levels are also a bit elevated. In terms of observation also, we requested support from the Pesticide Control Board. They went to Santander Farm, and they found that Santander had within their storerooms 8 different agrochemicals that they use. And I won't try to pronounce all the names here because they're a bit very technical. But I want to highlight amitrin. So that is one of the chemicals that they use in the field. And during the chemical analysis of water samples that we have done, we have found traces of amitrin, but we're trying to determine at this point the level. So they also use 2,4-D and et cetera. So these are 8 different agrochemicals that are used at Santander Farm. It's important that we obtain this information because this will help us determine any connectivity or trace between what they use and what we find in the field. So in terms of preliminary data of the chemical analysis that we're doing on the water samples at the Santander, in the Santander drainage network, we have found 8 chemicals of concern. At the Santander Canal, we have found 32 chemicals of concern. At the Santander Effluent Pond, we found 15 chemicals of concern. And then 150 meters upstream, we found 10 chemicals of concern. Again, noting that, again, these agrochemicals could come from areas from Santander and from outside Santander because the entire area is an agricultural development area. We're still pending sediment samples. We have 7 samples that we took. Again, if it is a chemical deposition within the river, the residues of those chemicals will be trapped in sediments, and the analysis will show any chemicals of concern. So, and then we have the fish tissue chemical analysis that is still being run. Again, it's just Murphy's Law. We had all intention to have the results of these 2 samples, at least the fish tissue sample, ready by Friday, but again, it's just we have some issues with the equipment, but we are working those issues out. So I was told that probably by the ending of next week, we should have these results, all the results ready. So we also took 3 dead fish from, well, the fish was not dead. So normally when you do sampling of fish mortality, you kind of try to catch the sample of fish, the fish just before it dies, basically. And so we had assistance from Dr. Abel Carrias, who did a necropsy on it. So necropsy is like a post-mortem. It tells you the cause of death of the fish. The result of the necropsy showed that the fish had excessive mucus on the entire body. The fish had blood coming from its anus. It had redness on the base of the fins, redness on the ventral portion of the body, redness on the gill cover, slightly cloudy eyes, slightly discolored gills. And so Dr. Abel Carrias determined the cause of death to be hypoxia, which is it's basically lack of oxygen within the water. Again, we are running fish tissue sample in terms of chemical analysis at the moment. So according to Dr. Carrias, he didn't, at least for this sampling that he did, he does not suspect any chemical cause of it because the results would have shown different results. In fact, he said that the organs would have been, the skin would have been damaged, the organs would have been a dark color, and he would have expected much more blood within the organs, etc. But again, we're not ruling out that. We're still running through with all the different samples that we need to do. These are pictures of the Maya catfish that we did the necropsy on. This is a picture, for example, of its liver, etc. So there's a lot of pictures that we have, but I just wanted to show these ones so that you guys could see the work that we do. So the chemical analysis that we are running for this response is all being done with a GCMS that we have in our DOE laboratory. Again, we are working very closely with the University of Belize, Dr. Apollonio Aguilar. He's helping us with determining, or at least interpreting the results. We're also working with Baja in terms of getting the samples. So there's a process that you need to prepare the sample before you run it through the equipment. Baja is helping us with that, and we have our very own lab technician, Mr. Henry Sanchez, who is running this equipment along with Ms. Marily Reyes, just to showcase that we have the capacity nationally. We have in-house capacity to be able to do this work that ordinarily we would have had to send abroad to be done. So I just wanted to highlight that. So this image shows the full agricultural development near the Belize River, close to the Santander farm. So you could see there's a large Mennonite farm that has cattle and corn crops just north of Santander. Santander is all the land in the green area, and then there's other fields, other agricultural development in the area. So this is important to highlight because, again, what we are trying to do is we kind of ruled out the issue being disease-related. I have spoken to some degree in some of the water quality assessment that we've done. I've discussed some of the chemical analysis that we're doing. So the rest of the information is in relation to, again, having a large amount of organic debris entering into the water body. And so I wanted to show this image as the beginning of that to say that, again, we have information to suggest that within the general area, there's about 57,468 acres of land under agricultural development. So it's a huge area. So this is an image showing the, just before the fish kill event on August the 3rd, we had a major flooding event that affected the area, the entire area. So this event started on July the 11th. In fact, the National Meteorological Office suggests that about 8 to 10 inches, not millimeters, 8 to 10 inches of rainfall fell within this general area in a very short period of time. Again, the duration of this flooding event was for 5 days, and the area affected was 3,695 acres, and the map shows all the different areas that were impacted. And again, all of the 7 areas discharged directly into Santander's canal that leads into the Belize River. So these are aerial images of proof of the area was flooded. These are some of the images that we have now that we could show. And again, imagine an area like this flooded. All the organic debris, all the agrochemicals that were placed within the fields would have been then dissolved into the water and then carried into the Belize River. We also have in-house, we had support from the Forest Department. Thank you, Chief Yanira. The Forest Department assisted us with collecting aerial or satellite imagery of the flooded area. And so this slide shows that on Saturday, the 11th of July, a severe tropical wave dropped 8 to 10 inches of rain over this area, basically. So Santander reported that the northeast portion of their cane field flooded and inaccessible. And then the rice field, if you could look at the image, the rice parcel that we found was fully inundated or flooded. It says the first image was July 19th. The second image was July 20th, and you could see the rice field was completely inundated. And then July 22nd, the water began to recede. And by July 23rd, the water had fully receded into, again, the Dragwa Creek and into the Belize River. So this is also a satellite imagery that shows the river under normal condition on May the 22nd, 2026. So the light blue color is the Dragwa Creek discharge, and then the yellow color is where it's the Santander's discharge. As you could look at on July 23rd, 2026, the Dragwa Creek discharge shows a high discoloration. So discolored water was coming from the rice field into the Belize River. And then on August 2nd, you could see discoloration starting from the Santander Canal. We also have information to show that between January 2026 and now, there has been almost 3,000 acres of land that has been cleared within that particular area, 2,950 to be exact, of land clearing happening within just a few months. So that's basically finding. And so right now, one of our, well, basically what we are saying to the public is that we kind of ruled out it being a disease. We are still running some chemical analysis. We have found ametrin in the canal at Santander. We'll be running chemical analysis on sediments. We'll be doing a few more on water quality and on fish tissue. We have enough information to show that there was a large amount of flood water from agricultural development in general within the area entering into the Belize River in a very short period of time. We believe that that may have triggered the algal bloom, and the algal bloom leading to the low dissolved oxygen, which caused the fish kill. And then the anoxic environment, the environment that was created without oxygen, led to the production of gas and mycotoxins that may have led to the death of the turtles and the crocodile. But before I finish with this presentation, I just want to highlight that, again, there was significant improvement in how we responded to this incident as compared to how we responded to incident in the past. One, this incident was done through significant collaboration with different experts and agencies within the country, and I will list them. And two, all the technical analysis, the advice, the consultation, the analysis in terms of running samples was done in Belize by local experts, and I think that's important for us to highlight. In terms of collaboration, I want to thank Honorable Marconi Leal. He actually was on the river with us on the fort. He was there observing what was going on. He was there with us while we were collecting water quality samples. So that's it just shows how much, again, his involvement was in relation to the response. I want to thank MIDH for assisting with the inspection at Santander Discharge Canal and confirmed support to close the canal. If we would have needed to close the Santander Canal, we would have done that. Also, the Ministry of Health for assisting with river monitoring and health advisory in our press release. I also want to thank the University of Belize, who assisted with river monitoring, running the chemical analysis using the GCMS and interpreting the data, in particular Dr. Apollonio Aguilar. BWSL assisting with river monitoring. So BWSL from the very beginning assisted us significantly. They had agreed to test the water quality from their double run plant every hour. And so that assisted us significantly. In fact, BWSL was the first to report that the water quality had been improving based on the tests that they were doing. And they also assisted us with our press release and advisory. The Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute assisted with river monitoring. The Forest Department assisted with remote sensing data. All the satellite images that we got was from them. BAHA is assisting with chemical analysis of water and fish tissue. The Fisheries Department assisted with river monitoring and water quality data. The PCB, Pesticide Control Board, assisted with visiting Santander to obtain the list of pesticides that they use. NEMA was on standby to assist with equipment and logistics if we needed. The Met Service assisted with climate data, rainfall. National Hydrological Service assisted with hydrological data, river flow, discharge. CIRD is assisting us with sediment analysis. Dr. Abel Carria conducted the necropsy of the fish. And also the Ministry of Energy, in particular the Hydro Belize Limited, was on standby to release water from the dam if we would have needed to flush this system out. So those were some of the key players, not to mention, or at least for me to mention, the significant support, guidance and leadership we received from our CEO, Ms. Milagro Matos. The support we received from Minister Orlando Harbet was significant. They allowed us to basically do what we needed to do within the shortest period of time. So I thank you for that. I also want to mention that we'll be holding a village meeting in the villages that have been affected on August the 29th. We'll be responding, at least informing the public formally. We want to bring out the villagers, explain this information that we have, and then give them the opportunity to ask us any question. But also, I believe that there's a lot we could learn from the villagers should this event happen in the past. Also, we had good feedback from local experts like Mr. George Maivit. There was a news article that just came out from Savannah Field Station that says that they kind of support the findings that we have. Again, we will reach out to them and have more formal communication with them. Again, we got call from concerned people like Mr. Kevin Andrew and all the way from Gales Point, from Dr. Emma Kay, and Dr. Colin Young. All of these people, they reach out to us and say, listen, this is what's happening. You guys need to respond, and we need to work together to come up with what the possible cause may be. And so moving forward, again, we'll be looking at culpability. We will see if there's anyone who have violated any aspect of the environmental law, and anyone who has violated any aspect of the law will be held accountable. Well, we will report back to the people. But more importantly, we'll be meeting with all the key farms within the area because we can't allow this situation to happen again into the future. And so each farm will have to put in place corrective actions, either to avoid this from happening again or from not allowing, reducing the possibility of it happening again into the future. But we do have a good, I think, understanding of what is going on, but we still are awaiting some critical information for us to have a final determination. So that's a quick presentation on the fish kill, where we are. And before I finish, I just want to speak a bit on the Bennett campaign, if I may. So the Bennett campaign is a campaign that we have at the Department of Environment that we want to try to change behavior of people who litter. And so it's an extensive public awareness and outreach campaign. We have the outreach unit within the department dedicated to it. There will be a lot of media. So, for example, there will be billboards. I think some of the program includes meeting with the bus owners, donating garbage bin for buses, putting stickers in the bus. I think we'll be putting stickers on some of the bus stops as well. But there's a lot that we'll be doing. One of the key things is strengthening legal framework. We have had several discussions internally in relation to what we need to do to amend the littering ticket violation regulations. So we are almost finalized with that. One of the things that we'll be doing is pushing back the time frame within which any authorized officer can issue a littering ticket. The current legislation says that an authorized officer has 48 hours to issue a littering ticket once he or she has seen an offense. We want to push that back to at least 5 to 7 days. We'll be increasing the authorized officers. So, for example, we'll be adding tour guides as being authorized to issue a littering ticket. We also will be including village council being authorized to issue a littering ticket, and we have a large list. We're expanding that list, basically. This coming Wednesday, Minister Habet will be in Placencia. We'll be holding a small ceremony where we'll be authorizing 9 village members from Placencia. The minister has authorized them to issue a littering ticket. We'll be doing the same soon. We'll reach out to San Pedro, Kikaker, and all the different municipalities to get a list of key persons, responsible persons, who they would like the minister to authorize to assist us in issuing littering ticket. But there's quite a bit of work that we're doing in relation to the legislation. The anti-littering campaign also is a campaign that will have extensive collaboration. We have sent letters to several different agencies, government and non-government, to invite them to be a part of the program. I think what we need to do is have greater visibility in terms of this campaign, having more information being shared with the public. And so I'm glad that the ministry has decided to hold press conferences, I think, every quarter. I think through that avenue, we'll be able to update the general public on some of the list of activities that we're doing. Again, the anti-littering campaign is a broad campaign. I could discuss maybe for the next 2 hours on some of the activities that we're doing. But I will just keep it at that because I think I've shared quite a bit in relation to the fish kill and the anti-littering campaign. If anyone in the general public is interested in joining with us with the anti-littering campaign, please contact the office at 822-2819, and we'll be willing to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mai, for providing those preliminary findings of the department's investigation and on the advancements of the Bennett initiative. So this brings us to our final portion of today's press conference. We'll now open the floor for questions from members of the media. Before asking your questions, please state your name and the media house you represent. We want to keep our questions concise to allow each of you all to have the time to ask your particular questions. We can direct our questions to the head table. Any of our technical leads that are present today will be able to answer. And with that, we want to begin with the first question. We do have a mic, a floating mic that's here. So let's start with that. 1 second.
So again, this is the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Climate Change and Solid Waste Management press conference. We heard from the Chief Climate Change Officer, Acting Chief Forest Officer, as well as Chief Environmental Officer. Right now is the time where the floor will be open for questions to ask those at the head table, and we'll proceed with that.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Jaliza Roberts, 7 News. In terms of coexisting with crocodiles, I have questions on that, and then, of course, I have questions on the river kill. So in terms of coexisting with crocodiles, can you all start off by explaining how you're educating people about this?
Sure. What we're doing is we're developing basically an agenda to work with the different schools. So we're targeting at different levels. At schools, we want to develop skits, go in there. We're thinking about doing a mascot and develop this program with them. So that is one at the high school, at the primary school level. When it comes to communities, we're planning to have some community meetings with key villages, for example, Kikaka, Guinea Grass, other areas that have these problems. So that is another way that we are trying to reach out to the public. And thirdly, of course, through social media, we are developing some reels and so forth to educate people through Facebook, which is very common. So we are looking at the lower level, which are the primary schools. We are looking at the community level, and then we are looking at the social media platform for now.
Okay, and secondly, have you all gotten any reports of tour guides taking tourists to feed the crocodiles?
We had an incident in 2016, 2015, thereabouts, where there was an incident where tourists were basically feeding sharks. And what they did is that every 12 o'clock, in order to get the different tourists to see the sharks, they would start to barbecue, and they would start to throw these to the tourists. And so we have had that incident before. We have had some reports, but informal reports, that they're doing that as well with crocodiles. So that is something that is ongoing. So we're trying to work with BTB, with the Tour Guide Association, to educate them and to see what is it that we can work with them. And we are also making them know that through the Wildlife Act, there are penalties for them doing this. So yes, we do have informal reports that this is happening.
Would you be able to elaborate on the penalties that we're looking at?
The penalties are very minimal at this point. With the new wildlife bill that's going to be passed, and the penalties can go up from $1,000 to $10,000 depending on the severity of the infraction.
Okay, last question. Do you know whether or not the crocodile in the video in Kikaka has since been located?
No, we do not know. A formal report was not really made to the office. It's only through social media. But it's difficult for us to know if we can, because we are not tagging crocodiles at this point. So we might see another crocodile, but it does not mean that it's the same crocodile that was there in San Pedro or on the video.
Now moving on to the river kill. We know that we heard that this is done, but the question is, can you speak to us a little bit about who owns the farm, what all you know about the farm? You know, like you mentioned it, but you didn't really go into detail in terms of all you learned about this farm, this rice farm.
Sure. So again, one of the reasons why I don't want to issue the name is because we wrote to the lands department to request a formal copy of the land tenure for us to. We need to verify that this person actually owns the land before we issue any particular name. But yes, so the Department of Environment did our internal checks, and we have found, at least according to our records, that the person does not have environmental clearance for this area, for the development of this area, which is a clear violation of the environmental regulations. A project of this size, in our estimation, would have required to undergo the EI process. And so violation of that process, the penalty is between $50,000 to $100,000. And so what we will do is, when we receive confirmation from the lands department that this person owns the land, we will still give the person an opportunity to provide any permits. That's the way how the process works. And if you can't, then again, the person will be held accountable for the violation. And so I just want to highlight that again, having a rice field so close to a water system like the Belize River is concerning for the Department of Environment. If it's just because of the way how rice is grown. And so normally a rice field is flooded with water to avoid any pest or disease. And when you want to harvest, you would discharge that water. And the current configuration of this field with the canal in the middle, discharging directly into Laboring Creek, which discharges directly into Belize River, that's a major concern for us. And so we need to look at this as a serious issue.
Would you be able to tell us about the substance or substances that you all found while doing the different research?
Well, so in terms of, again, so what we have found so far is just one trace of agrochemical or pesticides within the canal from Santander. But we do have a list of, for example, in the Santander field, there's about 8 chemicals of interest that we have found. At Santander Canal, there is 32. At the effluent pond, 15. And upstream Santander, there's 10 chemical of concern. So we still have to go through the additional process to look at the possibility of where these substances came from. We still need to go through another process to determine the concentration of these items, of these chemicals within this area. So there's more work for us to do.
Okay, in the report, you all explained that it was low dissolved oxygen, and that was a big part of it. But when it comes to the EPK and the crocodiles, that does not necessarily justify here. So what are you guys looking at when it comes to that avenue?
Well, I had mentioned that, again, when an aquatic ecosystem, when it dissolves oxygen levels go low, it creates what is called an anoxic environment. And so in an environment like that, you have bacteria that thrive well without oxygen. They proliferate and they grow, and they produce hydrogen sulfide, and hydrogen sulfide could be one of the causes of the death of the turtle and the crocodile. And then the other possible cause is mycotoxins. So certain bacteria produces mycotoxins that are very harmful to aquatic life, basically.
Okay, so last question. We know that in the press release as well, you all mentioned that Santander has a closed loop system. So the question is, when that overflows, where does it go to?
So the system is not 100% closed loop per se. The effluent pond discharge into the drainage system, and the drainage system is where water is obtained for irrigation. So in a normal circumstance, there is no, it's enclosed, but it's when the area floods, that's when the water goes into the canal and then discharges into the river. But we have already started conversation with Santander. So we have some broad things that we want to do, some broad corrective actions. And Santander are coming up with some very concrete actions that they could put in place to avoid this from happening again. So one of the things that they have presented to us is completely ensuring that the effluent water from the factory itself is completely it's a circular system they want to put in place where you won't have any discharge, basically. But again, that doesn't resolve the issue of some of the farms in the future, or an area of the farm still being flooded and organic matter still entering into the river, right? But at least that's one component that will assist with the amount and the concentration of organic matter going into the river. So it will contribute, but it won't be a fix, one thing that will fix everything. Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Maya and Ms. Yanira, for your question, for responding to the questions, and Ms. Roberts for asking on behalf of 7 News. We ready for another question?
Once again, this is the first of the regular quarterly engagement from the Ministry of Sustainable Development.
Can you please state your name and the media house you're representing, Miss? Thank you.
Yeah, again, we are at the auditorium for the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Climate Change, and Solid Waste Management here in Belmopan. This is
Brittany Gordon from News 5 Belize. This one is just as it relates to the crocodile incidents, right? You mentioned earlier that no official report has been sent to you guys regarding that specific one circulating online. Does the ministry ever act upon these videos by yourselves and go seek out the crocodiles or the instances to check? Is that something that you guys do? Is that part of the protocol?
Thank you for that question. Yes, we do respond to these incidents. Once we see them on Facebook, on social media, or a video is sent, that is actually what made us reactivate the task force so that we can see what is the situation. Some of our partners from San Pedro ACES reacted to some of the crocodiles that one of the crocodiles that they relocated. So yes, we do reach out and we do investigate the incident. However, there are times that the information is very limited.
Okay. Second question, in regards to the fish kill, the tests that are being done in country, I know that there was a timeline of one of them takes longer than the others,
Yeah.
but do we have an estimated time of completion for all of these when we'll get all the results?
Yeah, unfortunately, again, according to Murphy's Law, anything that could go wrong will go wrong. And so we had some issues with the equipment, unfortunately. So the GC has a specific, like a needle that injects the analyte to be tested. And we had an issue with the needle being clogged, and when we tried to remove it, it broke. So we had to replace that. Right now, we're having some issue with the software, but we have an expert from Mexico who came down and gave the staff some training maybe just a month ago. So we have him also on standby. We're working with him to resolve the issues. And so the latest information that I have is probably by the ending of next week, we will have all the information. And that will be the deadline because we are planning the village meeting on the 29th. So by the 29th, we have to have all the information. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the way we want to move forward. So basically what we want to do is there is a Belize River watershed management plan. It has not been formally adopted, but I think now more than ever we need to look at the watershed management plan. We need to strengthen it, and we need to get it formally endorsed by cabinet, and then we implement it. The reason why I mentioned the watershed management plan because it's a comprehensive document basically. And it really spells out what different agencies are responsible for in terms of managing development industry within this greater watershed. Again, I maintain that the Belize River, as you all know, is one of the more critical rivers for Belize because majority of our population depend on it. And we can't get this wrong. And so we need to look at the watershed management plan. We need to hold the agencies that have responsibility to manage development within the area accountable. And again, the farms, agricultural development within the area have a very critical role to play in terms of improving the practices that they do. And like I said, each individual farm has a role to play. And so it is our responsibility to reach out to them to ensure that they are managing the farm the best way that they can. And again, but there's different agencies with this different responsibility that has to put equal pressure on them to do what needs to be done. In fact, I think extensive conversation needs to be had with the Ministry of Agriculture. Again, they could assist us with some of the agrochemical use, the pesticide control board, who we work very closely with. They are also very critically important. Even, for example, the National Meteorological Service, in terms of collecting of data, climatic data, the National Hydrological Service, collecting data on rain discharge, river flow, etc. All of these things are critical. The Department of Environment has 2 different programs that we'll be implementing where we'll be procuring stationary water quality equipment that we want to put along the Belize River so that we could detect some of these changes a bit earlier. In particular, the chlorophyll A levels, because again, chlorophyll A level is an indicator of algae bloom. Also, we've had conversation with, for example, an aquatic ecologist, Dr. Ed Bowles, and so he'll be putting together for us a fish kill SOP in terms of when we respond, how do we respond, what are all the critical data that we need to collect. We are also having conversation with him in relation to developing an index of biological species that are impacted by pollution. And so we don't have an index like that in country. And as an aquatic ecologist, he has been, again, telling us that for a while, that while you collect water quality data, and that only tells half of the story. But if you have water quality data and you have analysis of the biological component of the water that are impacted by pollution, you get a more comprehensive view of what's going on within the aquatic ecosystem. So we'll be working with him to put together that index, and then we'll be working with Dr. Bowles to put together the the SOP for Fishkill into the future, so that when I'm no longer here, again, these approaches and procedures are standardized. Well, so we could wait it out. Again, the current forecast is for rains. Again, we had a contingency plan. Our contingency plan was to release water from the dam, which I think was very proactive, right? But one of the reasons why we didn't request them to do so is because it would have also washed away all the evidence that we would have needed to pinpoint who the culprit was. And so collecting data from the field was critically important. It's just like a crime scene, right? Basically, you can't interrupt or influence the crime scene without collecting data first. And so that's the reason why we hadn't done that. But obviously, and definitely, if anyone observe any issue downstream in terms of Fishkill, or even if the water color changes, please inform us, call us at 822-2819. Again, we will be on the river, again, continuing our monitoring. We won't stop that. And then we will respond accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony and Ms. Yanira, for your responses, and Ms. Gordon for your question from News 5 Belize. We want to open the floor for final items or comments, any interventions from the speakers at the head table. And maybe this could spark some more questions as well.
Thank you very much. I think I will end my statement by saying that climate change also give opportunities for youths. First, we welcome any internship interest in our department. And second, we also have a climate academy. And this year, we're making sure that we have a long-term sustainability. So we're signing an MOU with PAC. So if you're interested to join the climate academy, please call 828-5960 or just visit our department. Thank you.
Okay, in closing, I would like to say and remind the public to please call the Forest Department hotline at 610-1524 to report any crocodile incident that we have, any jaguar conflict issue that we have, any forestry-related issue that we have. If you want to be part of the Greening Belize initiative, please feel free to call this number, 610-1524. Thank you.
Sure. I just want to basically restate the fact that, again, at this point in time, I think the capacity within the country is increasing significantly for us to really understand what is going on within the environment. Our response to this fish kill won't end just because we've collected enough data. There are still critical conversations that we need to have, not only with the farms, but with other technically sound people within the country. For example, I've informed Dr. Emma Kay, who works closely with the Belize network of NGOs, that we want to meet with them and give them a presentation so that then they could critique the work that we do. Because, again, we need outside eyes on the process and procedures that we use, and we need them to criticize and critique what we're doing so that we could improve, all right? I think that's a responsible way of looking at this. And so there's a lot more that we need to do to really understand the completeness of this fish kill. And we'll be doing so. We'll be taking our time into the future to ensure that we meet with everyone we need to meet with, and we learn and we improve the system so that if it happens again, our response will be even better than this current one. I would also like to highlight and thank the Honorable Minister and the CEO. Again, I've been with the government for about 27 years, and this is the first time that I've seen a proactive approach in terms of having a press conference on environmental matters. Normally, these things are done for police-related matters, etc. So, CEO and Minister, I think you need to be recognized for this. If we do it quarterly, it's even better because then we report to the people. Again, the positions that we hold are public positions, and we are accountable to the people at the end of the day. So, kudos and for putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you for those final remarks. Do we have any final question? All right. So with that, I would like to bring this press conference to a close.
And again, this was the first of the quarterly engagement press conference that will be held by the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Climate Change and Solid Waste Management. On behalf of myself, William Usher, and Sean Lopez, we say thanks for choosing love.
On behalf of the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Climate Change and Solid Waste Management. You're listening to Love FM, 25 minutes to 4 o'clock.
Lucy